Sarah sat at the kitchen table in her small but cozy apartment, looking at her bills. Life wasn't easy, but she was proud of her independence. The phone rang and the name of her older sister, Melissa, appeared on the screen. "Hi, sis, how are you?" came the voice on the other end. Melissa always sounded as if nothing in the world could stop her. Her voice was full of enthusiasm, and Sarah knew that it was another request. Melissa cut to the chase without any further ado. "I have some great news. I'm getting married." Sarah was shocked. This was her sister's third wedding, but she tried to hide her surprise. "That's wonderful, Melissa. Congratulations," she said. However, her sister did not give her time to recover. "I have a small request. I need your help. Can you look after the children? It's just for a few days while I go about organizing the wedding." Sarah hesitated. She loved her nephews, but 7 children. That sounded like a disaster. Melissa had a way with words. "Sarah, you know how much I've always been able to count on you. I promise this won't be for long. Besides, you're their favorite aunt. They adore you." Sarah tried to find a way out. "What if you could find a nanny?" Melissa sighed, creating a dramatic effect. "Babysitters cost a fortune, and I've already spent so much on the wedding." Please, Sarah, I'm your sister." The words, "I'm your sister," always worked for Sarah. She felt obligated to help Melissa, even when it was against her own interests. And after a few minutes of hesitation, Sarah agreed okay, but only for a few days. Melissa was overjoyed, and it was palpable even over the phone. "Thank you. You're the best sister." Sarah hung up the phone, feeling mixed emotions. She knew that this decision could be a source of problems, but at the same time she wanted to help her sister. A few days later, Melissa brought the children to Sarah's apartment. The kids ran into the apartment with a lot of noise, filling the space with their voices. "Everything will be fine here," Melissa said, quickly looking around the room. "I left a list of instructions on the fridge." Sarah felt like her apartment had turned into a children's camp. "I'll be back in a few days," Melissa said, kissing Sarah on the cheek. The door closed, and Sarah was left alone with 7 children who had already begun to turn the apartment upside down. As Sarah began to prepare dinner, one of the children ran up to her with words "Zigwant Sarah. Mom said we're staying here for a long time." These words made her wary. What does a long time mean? Would it really be just a few days? Sarah began to realize that this little request could turn into something more than she expected. Sarah had always been someone who could be relied on. Her friends called her the heart of the family, but she often felt that this trait was being taken advantage of. After her divorce, Sarah started a new life in a small town where she found peace and a job as an accountant. She loved the quiet of her home, but at the same time felt obligated to support her family. Her relationship with her sister Melissa was complicated. Melissa was the star of the family, energetic, charismatic, but too prone to drama. She always found a way to get what she wanted, often manipulating the feelings of her family. Melissa, Sarah's older sister, lived a life full of exciting events. Her third wedding was further proof that she loved loud statements and beautiful decorations. But behind this bright exterior was a person who always found a way to shift her problems onto others. Her children, 7 restless kids aged 3 to 12, were a real challenge. Melissa loved them, but could not always give them enough attention. Melissa's children had their own personalities. Michael is 12 years old and the oldest and the most sensible, but even he sometimes couldn't keep his younger siblings quiet. Emma is 10 years old and is a dreamy artist who is always drawing something on any surface. Jack is 8 years old, a little leader who always invented new games, often dangerous ones. Lily is 7 years old and is an energetic girl who never sits still. Ben is 5 years old and a little tomboy who loved to play with technology. Sophia is 4 years old, quiet but cunning, often hiding to avoid any responsibility. Tommy is 3 years old. He is the smallest but the loudest, a real king of tears and laughter. Sarah and Melissa grew up in a small family where their parents tried to raise their children in love, but always experienced financial difficulties. Sarah often had to take responsibility for her younger sister, which formed the habit of being a guardian. Melissa, on the other hand, has always been the favorite. She received more attention, and Sarah learned from an early age not to express her grievances. Their parents had long ago moved to another state, leaving their daughters to resolve their conflicts on their own. For Sarah, Melissa's request was a challenge. She realized that it could disrupt her quiet lifestyle, but she also felt that it would be too cruel to refuse her sister. Melissa, on the other hand, believed that her sister should help because family is always supportive. She did not see anything wrong with shifting her responsibilities to Sarah, as she was sure that she would be able to handle it. During one of the calls, Melissa inadvertently made a mistake. You're like a real savior for me. In fact, this is only the first stage in my wedding plans. This phrase alerted Sarah. What does the first stage mean? Does Melissa have any other hidden plans that she's not telling us about? Sarah never thought that everyday life with 7 children would be so difficult. Already in the morning, her calm rhythm of life turned into chaos. The children woke up at different times, demanded attention, and fought with each other. "I won't eat this porridge," Lily shouted, throwing her spoon on the table. "I want pancakes." Jack added, having already stained his chair with honey. Sarah tried to calm them all down at once, but she didn't have the hands or the patience. Michael, Melissa's eldest son, tried to help, but even he couldn't keep the younger ones quiet. Food was the first big challenge. Sarah planned the menu, but the children had their own preferences. They refused to eat healthy food, insisting on sweets and snacks. "Why can't you cook something tastier?" Emma asked, looking at the broccoli that Sarah had put on the table. Sarah could feel the tension building. That she knew she had to keep her cool, but her patience was gradually wearing thin. Jack, the 8-year-old leader, caused the first flood in the house. He decided to wash his toys in the bathroom, leaving the tap open. "Jack, hey, what have you done?" Sarah exclaimed when she saw the water flowing into the kitchen. "I just wanted them to be clean," he replied with an innocent look. This incident made Sarah rethink her control methods. She realized that she needed to adapt quickly to the new circumstances. Sarah called Melissa to share her difficulties, but instead of sympathy, she got a response that made her even angrier. "They're just kids, Sarah. Don't overact. I have wedding preparations and I can't do everything at once," Melissa said. "But you didn't even warn me how complicated it was," Sarah replied, but she sounded more tired than angry. By the evening, the situation had not improved. Tommy, the youngest, would not go to sleep and cried until he fell asleep in Sarah's arms. Lily painted the wall in the living room with markers, and Ben took apart the TV remote. It's only the first day," Sarah whispered to herself as she lay on the bed. She began to doubt whether she would have the strength to make it through this ordeal. During dinner, Sarah accidentally found Melissa's receipts for past purchases on the kitchen table. The expenses for cosmetics, clothes, and expensive restaurants looked suspicious, given that her sister was constantly complaining about lack of money. How can she afford this kind of life if she doesn't even have enough money for a nanny? Sarah thought. The thought began to creep into her mind, making her wonder if there was something Melissa wasn't telling her. The second week with 7 children turned into a real challenge for Sarah. She would wake up thinking that today would be easier, but things only got worse. The chaos in the house was at its peak. The children were arguing. Toys were everywhere, and the refrigerator was emptying at a frantic rate. Sarah decided to call Melissa to discuss her feelings. "Melissa, I can't handle this. Why, I need your help. Why aren't you even calling to see how things are going?" Sarah asked, sounding desperate. "Sarah, I'm busy. I have so many things to do with the wedding. You have no idea. You're a grown woman. You can handle it," Melissa replied, completely unconcerned. Sarah couldn't understand why Melissa was being so irresponsible. While cleaning up, she found several more receipts and bank statements from her sister's accounts. Large sums of money were spent on expensive jewelry, cosmetics, parks and party halls. OR. How can she afford this if she's always talking about financial difficulties? Sarah thought. She tried to discuss it with Melissa. You say you don't have money, but I see it differently. What's going on? Sarah asked bluntly. It's none of your business. I know what I'm doing. You just take care of the kids, Melissa replied sharply. The children's behavior was getting worse and worse. Jack, who lacked attention, began to show aggression toward the younger ones. Emma drew on the walls in the living room again, and Tommy threw a tantrum over a broken toy. Though Sarah realized that the children were also stressed because of their mother's absence, but she didn't know how to deal with it. Mom, when is Melissa coming back? Asked Lily, holding her hand. Soon, I hope, Sarah answered, trying to hide her frustration. Sarah called her older brother Marcus to share her feelings. Marcus, I don't know what to do anymore. Melissa is not even interested in the children. She just left them with me and disappeared. Sarah, I told you a long time ago that Melissa only thinks about herself. She's always done that. Maybe you should put her in her place, Marcus advised. And Sarah began to wonder if she should continue to silently fulfill her sister's every whim. In another conversation, Sarah openly expressed her grievances to Melissa. You left me with 7 children without even thinking about how I would cope. That's not fair, she exclaimed. Sarah, you're being dramatic. It's only been a few weeks. I deserve to be happy, and it's my wedding, Melissa replied without a shadow of sympathy. This conversation was a turning point for Sarah. She realized that her sister would not change. At the end of the episode, Sarah finds a document that shocks her even more. It says that Melissa has a large debt that she is hiding. Is she trying to use me to cover her expenses? Sarah thought. Sarah was becoming increasingly suspicious that Melissa's financial situation was far from what she was trying to make it look like. After a few days of chaos with her children, she decided to take a closer look at the documents she had found. To her surprise, one of the folders contained a contract with a bank for a large loan. Why didn't she tell me about this earlier? Sarah thought as she looked at the document. Next, she found receipts for luxurious wedding expenses, designer dresses, elite catering, and expensive decor. This isn't just a wedding, it's a show at someone else's expense, Sarah thought indignantly. The next morning, Sarah decided to ask Melissa directly about these expenses. Melissa, I found your papers, and you have a huge debt and you're spending money on a wedding. How are you going to pay it back? Sarah, this is a temporary difficulty. The wedding will help me reach a new level of life. I have a plan, Melissa replied, avoiding a direct look. What plan? To leave me with your problems again? Sarah asked sharply. After this conversation, Sarah decided to talk to her brother Marcus. She told him about the documents she had found and her concerns. Marcus, this doesn't look like a minor indiscretion anymore. Melissa is literally using me to cover her debts. Sarah, she's always done this. She's always found a way to shift her problems to someone else. You need to take action, Marcus replied. Later that day, Sarah found out that Melissa had opened a line of credit in her name. How could she do that without my permission? Sarah exclaimed when she received the letter from the bank. This fact was the last straw for her. She realized that Melissa willing to do anything to save her reputation and financial situation, even if it meant destroying her relationship with her family. Sarah decided to talk to Melissa again, but this time with a more firm attitude. You opened a loan in my name without my permission. That's illegal, Sarah began. Sarah, don't exaggerate. I was going to pay it back. It's just that I need help now. Melissa justified herself. That's not help, that's betrayal. You didn't even ask me, Sarah replied indignantly. Sarah could no longer contain her indignation. She invited Melissa for a frank conversation, hoping to set the record straight. Melissa was meet in the kitchen, where the documents exposing her financial fraud were already on the table. Sit down. Melissa, we need to talk, Sarah said in a firm voice. What happened this time? Melissa asked innocently, sitting down across from her. Sarah pointed to the documents as, you opened a loan in my name. This is no small thing, Melissa. You've put me in great danger. Sarah, it's only temporary. I intended to pay it back right after the wedding. It's not as serious as you think, Melissa replied, trying to remain calm. temporarily. You didn't even ask my permission," Sarah replied sharply. "This is not helping the family. This is an abuse of trust." Melissa began to defend herself. "You've always been like that. You've always exaggerated. I'm doing this for my children, for our family. You don't even understand what it's like to raise 7 children without the support of a man." Sarah could not believe her ears. "And you think that justifies stealing? I've helped you whenever I could, but you've crossed the line." Melissa decided to go on the offensive. "You're just jealous of me. You've always been alone and never had a family. You don't even understand what real responsibility is." These words wounded Sarah deeply. She got up from her chair, trying to collect herself. "I have always supported you, even when you made mistakes, but that doesn't give you the right to use me." Melissa raised her voice. "If you are so perfect, why should I suffer? You have no children, no husband. It's easy for you to sit there and judge me." Sarah, trying to remain calm, replied, "My life is not a reason for your manipulations. I trusted you, Melissa. You were my sister, and now I'm not even sure if I can call you that." Melissa broke down and started crying. "I just wanted everything to be okay. I thought you would understand." Sarah felt a moment of pity, but her disappointment was too great. She said, "I want you to take responsibility for your actions. I can't keep correcting your mistakes." Sarah spent a sleepless night thinking about the situation. Melissa's heartbreaking words kept echoing in her head. On the one hand, this was her sister, the family she had always tried to support. On the other hand, Melissa had betrayed her trust, used her kindness, and jeopardized her financial stability. Sarah sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, looking at the bills she would now have to pay. Her mind told her to be firm, but her heart was pulling at her to forgive. If I forgive her, will anything change? Will this be another time she just takes advantage of me? She wondered aloud. Sarah remembered how, as a child, she always took responsibility for her younger sister. Their parents often fought, and Sarah was the one who protected Melissa from conflicts. I promised myself then that I would always be there for her," she whispered, flipping through an old family album. But now that the situation had gone so far, Sarah began to realize that perhaps her overprotection was the reason for Melissa's behavior. Calling her friend Karen, Sarah told her about her concerns. Karen, always direct and decisive. Setting, "Sarah, sometimes loving someone means setting boundaries. You've given her too many chances. Maybe it's time to let her know that you're not going to let yourself be used anymore." Karen's words touched Sarah. She knew her friend was right, but would she have the courage to do it? The next day, Melissa came to Sarah with a new request. She wanted Sarah to help her pay for some of the wedding expenses once again. Are you serious, Melissa?" Sarah asked sharply. "After everything that happened, you're asking for money again." Melissa began to make excuses. "This is the last time, I promise. And the wedding is coming up, and I just can't do it all on my own." These words were the last straw for Sarah. Sarah took a deep breath and said firmly, "No, Melissa, I can't help you anymore. You have to learn to take responsibility for your actions." Melissa looked at her sister in surprise, but Sarah did not stop. "I've always been there for you, but now I realize that you're just taking advantage of me. If you want to change something, start by taking responsibility for your decisions." Melissa first tried to cry and elicit sympathy, but when she saw that it was no longer working, she got angry. "Okay, Sarah, if you don't want to help me, then don't. But don't be surprised if one day you are left alone and no one comes to help you." Sarah felt a pain in her heart, but she did not allow herself to be emotional. Sarah woke up earlier than usual. The sun was just beginning to illuminate her bedroom, and the first thing she felt was a strange combination of lightness and anxiety. What's next? She asked herself quietly as she looked in the mirror. It was the first morning that Sarah felt like her life no longer revolved around Melissa and her endless demands. Sarah made herself a cup of coffee and sat down by the window, her mind wandering back to the fight she had with her sister yesterday. "Did I do the right thing?" she wondered. As Sarah realized that her decision was not just about money or refusing to help. It was a challenge to the very foundations of their relationship. Suddenly the phone started ringing. Melissa's name appeared on the screen, and Sarah hesitated for a few seconds before answering. "Hello," she finally said. On the other end, she heard only silence, followed by a short answer. I wanted to apologize." It was a moment Sarah had not expected. But were Melissa's words sincere? Melissa began to explain that she had reconsidered her behavior and realized how much she depended on Sarah. "I don't want to lose you, Sarah. I've been selfish, and I see that now," she said. Sarah listened, but was in no hurry to accept the apology. "Words are good, Melissa, but I want to see change." That afternoon, Sarah met with her friend Karen to share the news. Karen was someone who always told the truth, even if it hurt. She called me. She said she wanted to change," Sarah explained. Karen smiled. "People can change, but only if they want to. Give her a chance, but remember your limits." Then Sarah decided to use her free time for herself. She enrolled in a photography course she had been dreaming of for years. It was her first step towards a life she wanted to live for herself, not for others. At her first class, she met people who shared her passion. Her new friends inspired her to see the world in a new way. A few weeks later, Melissa asked to meet up. Sarah agreed, but this time on her terms. Melissa seemed different, as she told me that she had started taking responsibility for her actions and had even found a part-time job to cover the cost of the wedding. "I want to show you that I can change," Melissa said. Sarah felt that her sister was really trying, but she was still cautious. Sarah set out her conditions. "If we want to rebuild our relationship, it will be on an equal footing. I will no longer be the one who takes on all your problems." Melissa agreed, but would she have the strength to stick to these conditions? Sarah was on her way home from the meeting. She again had a mixed feeling in her heart, joy at her own progress and a slight sadness for her sister.